Welcome to Age of AI, Politics, Law, and Society, hosted by Medlir Mema, Chris Lamont, and Young Diogenes, in association with the Global Governance Institute in Brussels.
Jesse, great having you with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, Rapid Innovation.
Yeah, Rapid Innovation it's been a work in progress company. At the end of the day, I guess in the crudest sense, is a development company. We help people build stuff, but we've always been focused on future tech. So I've spent some time in the blockchain space, spent a fair amount of time in the AI space. And right now, for the most part, what I'm working on is what I would call a digital labor development company. So we work with people to build complex systems that are doing meaningful, valuable digital.
Okay, and we'll talk about that in a second. There was something in the way that you introduced the work that you do, and you said, I've worked in the space in blockchain and a little bit in AI. For people that are interested in AI, it seems to be AI and nothing else. And there's this obsession, this idea that we are in this age of AI, that we have named our podcast the Age of AI, and that everything else is subsumed under this age of AI. Where do you fall in that? Because debates and discussions about AI are long running. This is only the latest iteration of developments on AI. What's your take on all this?
I've been fascinated with AI for a long time. The problem that I've always had was that, and when I say always had since like 2008, probably when I really became very interested in the AI space, is that AI was very narrowly useful. And when something is very narrowly useful, there's just not much you can do with it. And so I'm into solving a broad range of problems. And so AI just wasn't really my thing. I mean, I played around with it. I built a couple of interesting little AI applications, but I just wasn't super interested in making a career out of it. I thought we were going to start seeing breakthroughs in the AI space when it happened 5 years ago or so.
So you think we're actually ahead of schedule on this?
I think so. I mean, at least not that my opinion really matters that much, but from what I was doing, and like we just made such slow progress for such a long period of time. If you look back at what was happening in the AI space in like the early 2000s, and then let's say 2010 and even really 2015, there just wasn't much going on. I mean, it was like we were figuring out how to create like handwriting recognition algorithms, right? We just really hadn't figured much out. And I remember when Google dropped the paper, attention is all you need. And I read through that and I thought it was interesting. Like it was more of an academic read. I didn't really realize. And then when ChatGPT 2 came out, for me, that was when the lights turned on, because what happened was I had a guy inside my own company who built an agentic system with ChatGPT 2 that did meaningful, valuable work, meaning it took a process that I used to charge maybe $30,000 for, 6 weeks worth of work, a couple of guys working on something, and it did it in 3 days with no human labor. And he built this. Man, like this machine, this thing that we built it's worth $30,000 to silent, right? Multiple people over and over again, because it was a process people were, very willing to pay me money to do. And for me, that was when I realized there's enough intelligence now that you can start doing human kind of labor that has never been.
Let's talk about this digital labor revolution, right? You've spoken about this in the past, and like you said, this is one area that you are just using these technologies to actually make a difference in. Where do you think we are today in terms of digital workers taking over traditional roles? And what do you think are the prospects? When you envision a digital labor revolution, what does that look like to you?
I believe that it's around, so the labor market in the world today is like $52 trillion. I'm not sure if I'm getting the number right, but I think the knowledge work side of that is around a little bit more than half. So like $15 trillion worth of knowledge work is done on a yearly basis, right? Knowledge work meaning that I can sit at a computer and I can think, or I can type, and I can do something that someone's willing to pay money to do. So that might be consulting, it might be writing code, to fill in the blank. There's a lot of knowledge work, like a lot of it. that happens. I believe that currently today, AI systems are probably smart enough with the right architecture and infrastructure when you're building them, are probably smart enough to do 80% of that knowledge work, 80% of that $15 trillion worth of useful work that people are doing. And I think that is true today. I think that the market is not going to accept that. And part of the reason for that is that there's a vast majority of it that's going to require humans in the loop for quite some time.
So what do you mean the markets will not accept that? What does that mean?
Well, I focus on like replacing human beings with digital like systems, right? So that's basically what I do now for a living. And there are a lot of company owners even, but mostly it's the workforce itself. They're just not ready to accept that as true. I had developers inside my own company that were not utilizing AI, but like to augment themselves into their own jobs. Like as we're building out the things that we're building for other people.
Well, either don't admit or don't accept that world. We end this podcast by always saying stay human, right? There is this commitment to a human-centered economy, human-centered world, a human-centered civilization. What is the driving force behind your motivation? So what motivates you in terms of saying, my job is to replace humans? What is the motivation behind it?
You know what? Very, very few people that I've ever met in my entire life love 100% of their job. And if you go, and I took just a quick survey of the 20 people that I have to work for today, what you would discover very quickly is that the ones that love their jobs the most probably love 15% of their job. I think one of the things that's going to happen inside the digital labor revolution, if you want to call it that, is that human beings are going to start doing things that they really enjoy. I know that I've shifted a whole lot of my focus towards things that I really, really enjoy doing. Not only do I really enjoy doing them, I'm really good at doing. And so I think that one of the fears that people have is that if you start replacing human labor with digital labor, you're going to replace all of it. And I haven't seen that come to fruition. Maybe in a few cases here and there, a digital labor system can completely replace human beings. But for the most part, I just haven't seen it. Like a good example of this would be, we did an experiment not that long ago to build a system that created reels on Instagram. And we had the system creating these reels all by itself. And it did all right. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of people who are super interested in watching like 100% AI generated garbage on the internet. What was interesting though is that we started outsourcing about 3% of the work of that agentic system. So people needed to be a little bit involved in the system. And we went from creating garbage that AI generated garbage that shows up on the internet to like stuff that people are actually interested in watching. I mean,
so is your vision then that you come in, you do 10% of what you used to do, and then you go home and do whatever you want? And because of productivity gains, your salary or your income still keeps up with your needs to make it?
Why would salary change? I mean, at the end of the day, so think about this.
Well, in some places, your wages are commensurate to your time that you put in.
Yeah.
And if you can do the work much faster, that's the amount of time you get paid for. So I can imagine there are job shortages. There's people moving to more part-time type of employment, which is fine. As you pointed out, people don't want to do every aspect of their job as long as their income is still the same. But I suspect that in a capitalist society, that's not going to be the case.
I mean, I don't know how you would avoid that though. Like, what do? You just have every single value producing human being on planet Earth all of a sudden it's in poverty. The problem is it just doesn't work. We're going to have to figure something out other than, I'm sorry, everyone's now homeless.
Yeah, well, that's a question. That's my point. So I guess the question here is, shouldn't we figure that out now while we are also undertaking this major restructuring of the economy and the workforce?
I mean, I think we should figure it out. I think the bigger question is who should figure it out and who should start making a big deal about it, because it seems like a lot of people that ought to be very concerned about it aren't. To me, I mean, I hear some voices that are saying hey, we need to figure this out, but no one that really has the power to do anything about it seems to be taking it as seriously as I think they ought to.
Here in the United States, obviously, a student of mine did some research about the previous Congress, and I think there were over 200 bills that they were proposed for different aspects, and much of it had to do with retraining and re-education of the workforce. And we'll get to that in a second, I guess, so I don't want to anticipate that quite yet. But so there is some, but none of those bills obviously made it to the floor, so they were not voted. They kind of stayed in committees, but there is enough goodwill, and there's enough commitment to this, or at least understanding or appreciation that this is disruptive. We need to do something about that. And let me ask you, if I can, just a follow up on this post-work economy and what that looks like. So as AI reshapes the labor market, what might that world look like? I think you've described a little bit what that is. You come in and you do, kind of like a bit or a percentage of what you used to do in the future or in the past. But are there any particular sectors that you believe will be impacted first and hardest? I mean, we've seen some evidence of that already, but as you advise companies, what do you see?
So, like, if you go back 2 months ago and maybe 3 months ago, if you were writing code, like programming, if you're a programmer, your job was pretty safe. As of today's date, it's no longer safe. Like, we've had enough progression in the last 3 months that I would say that within 8 months, 90% of all meaningful code will be completely written by AI. It'll be architected by humans, but it will all be written by 100% of it will be written by AI. I don't think the job of programmer is going to exist in the next 24 months. I don't think that job will exist at all. Now, does that mean that programmers will go away? I don't think so. I had someone gave me an amazing analogy the other day. They said accountants used to be, like, we used to have calculators, right? They would sit down, they would calculate massive tons and tons of figures. They would give those to the accountants, and then the accountants would go and put all their numbers together, and they would report that to the business owner. When the computers came out, you would think that the job of being a human computer would go away. And it did. And then you would think next that accountants would go away. They never have. And then you'd think we write now amazing software that does accounting, like QuickBooks and all this other stuff that really does just amazing accounting work. You'd think with that, accountants.
Well, accountants may not go away,
Still
but the number of accountants responsible for a task may go away.
Yes. And I think that is, and I would say that what an accountant is, like the value that they add to the marketplace change. And so what I see happening is that someone who just sits down and pounds on the keyboard all day, it turns out, like, those people are going to go away. There's no need for them, because why would I pay you $100 to do something I can pay an AI 2 cents to do? Just it's not economically feasible for me to keep them on the payroll. But if you have a mind that allows you to architect complex systems and you can manage these AI systems to write quality code, you're going to be in high demand for a very, very long time and possibly forever. Because I don't know that, at least in a post or in a pre-ASI world, or maybe even a pre-AGI world, I don't think these systems are going to be smart enough to do their own architecting. And they're certainly not creative enough to understand novel ideas and novelty, and then act on that and actually problem solve inside of that paradigm of this has never been seen before, this certain twist has never been done before. And so, like, in that sense, programmers are safe, right? At least to some extent. But their job role is going to completely change. And I think that if you take that same concept, you can move it across the industry. Like, for instance, doctors are probably always going to exist. But the truth is, even right now, today, you probably have a better chance of diagnosing your own illness on your own using a large language model than you do going to a doctor who doesn't actually know you that well, who's going to just listen to a couple of things that you have to say and then give you some sort of a diagnosis of what's wrong with you. The truth is, more people are actually today going to doctors with correct diagnostic information about what is wrong with them than they're able to do.
Right. Yeah, I think I read on Reddit, I think somebody had diagnosed themselves, or the ChatGPT helped them remove the clicking, like their jaw used to lock, and ChatGPT provided some basic instructions, and I guess that solved it. And then a bunch of other people followed it, and all of them also were healed. And I was like, all right, we're in a new era. And then you can tell there were some that were actually a little bit upset that he wasn't working for them. And so then some were just calling this snake oil. And Jesse, yeah, go ahead.
Like there was a little kid that had some sort of strange disease that his parent, like they'd been to a bunch of specialists and doctors who'd really figure it out. And they started using LLMs and got it diagnosed in like a week. Went in and got their diagnosis confirmed by by medical staff. Like that's the kind of thing that's going to start happening, right? Are doctors going to become useless after that? Like absolutely not. Like that. I don't think we live in a post-doctor world. I think we just live. It's just a paradigm shift.
Right.
Knowledge work is changing, and that's knowledge work.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this, about how companies can prepare. I mean, you are, again, the CEO and the founder of Rapid Innovation through your company. And of course, you've helped entrepreneurs build AI, blockchain-powered products. And also, you've also worked a lot on decentralization, right? When you look at how these companies are adapting to AI, what would you say is the number one mistake organizations are making today when it comes to implementing AI?
I mean, I would say it falls. There seems to be two camps that most companies fall in. One, they're like, oh, I used ChatGPT a year ago and it wasn't useful to me, and so I'm not ever going to look at it again. And they've kind of got their mindset that this technology isn't going to work for them. And oftentimes they have a very, very outdated view, even if it's 6 months old. I think the other one is just overhyping it and think that it's the thing that's going to solve all your problems. Like the truth is, I think you need to have a realistic understanding where the technology is today, what work it actually can do, what work it cannot do, and have a balanced approach to what it can do inside your business. Because I think either of those two cases, I just have seen it cause problems. The other thing is to realize that we don't live in an AGI world. Yes, I think we're getting close, but we're still dealing with relatively narrow AI. It is that where you build and you architect these complex systems that accomplish something somewhat specific. Now, is it a lot broader than it used to be? Like, absolutely. That specific thing might be, I want you to make Instagram reels for me, which is not narrow. Or it might even be like, I want to build an agentic system that does general marketing tasks for me. But you're not going to necessarily build a system that does marketing tasks and financial tasks and other things. So like be thinking about how to architect the systems that you're building in a more narrow sense. Because I think a lot of people have, especially if they're overhyped a little bit, they have this idea that they can just deploy a large model and it will do
everything for them. Yeah,
everything for them. And it just isn't. It isn't true yet. I think there's a world coming where that's going to be more increasingly true over time. But
Jesse, here's up, because we have this conversation off air, and you were talking about your relationship with your employees and how many employees you have and everything else. Over the last few years, has the number of people working in your company, has it increased or decreased?
It's decreased a lot.
Yeah. Okay. And that's as a result of these kinds of productivity gains that you have been able to pick up because of developing technology.
Yeah, I mean, I'll paint a picture for you. This is only true as of 4 days ago.
So April of 25. April
of 25. I sat down and I was just testing out a couple of things. And I wrote a piece of software that in about 4 minutes, over the course of about 4 hours, because the AI has to do the work, right? But I spent about 4 minutes. I had a document that probably would have taken me a week to put together. So let's say that the total investment of my time was 40 hours and then about let's say 44 hours. I was able to create a piece of software in those 44 hours of invested time that took a team of 6 people, highly paid, professional, trained people, about 3.5 months to build.
Oh, okay.
And so if you do the math on that, let's say 6 people times 40 hours a week times 3.5 months compared to my 44 hours on my own.
So let me pull that thread a little bit, because there's a lot of talk about the sustainable use or unsustainable use of resources by AI. I mean, by most accounts, right now, we are using subsidized kind of AI models. The true value and cost of using these models is actually not obvious to us. Much of that, companies like OpenAI and others are absorbing And then if we bring in other negative externalities, like, again, climate costs, demands on resources, water, rare earth minerals, and everything else, the true cost of using AI models, most likely is actually much higher than what we're looking at right now. So when you take that in consideration, if in fact at some point we have to come to terms with the fact that we just can't keep on having free models. I'm not talking about you because you build your own models, but the rest of us that use it on a regular basis, we're like, oh yeah, I can drop 10 people because I can do this myself now because look, I have a cheap model of AI and I can use it. When in fact, the true cost of that model is much, much higher. And does that still make sense in a world where we're paying the true cost of training these models and of using all these resources that I was alluding to?
I think the true cost of an AI will be roughly 1/100th of the cost of a human. Roughly, probably.
Is it where we are now or where you think we're going to be?
No, because I was able, if you think about it, if you just look at what the AI did for me, it did about 3.5 months worth of work in about 4 minutes. So,
well, it costs you 80 cents, but again, if you include the negative externalities there, if you have to cap.
So that's where I said, I think the actual true cost is much higher than that, but I think it might be, it might be 1 to 1,000. Okay, it might be that. It might be 1 to 100. If that was the case, then the true cost of featuring that would be, let's call it $80,000. I just don't think it was. I know it wasn't $80,000 worth of compute. It wasn't $80,000 worth of running stuff. That would be 1 to 100. Might have been 1 to 1,000 at $8,000, but I don't think so. The cost to deploy, build for its useful life, even if you're taking it into account like rare earth minerals and all that stuff, you're probably looking at 1 to 1,000. And though it's just much, much more efficient than a human is. At the end of the day, it just is much, much more efficient.
And that seems to track with technological changes and advancements. From one industrial revolution to the next, productivity keeps getting higher and higher. Again, yep. I think we need to do, and this is maybe a general remark I think out there, but we need to do a better job of thinking about externalities. Because again, we think of the industrial revolution with whether it's coal and steam or whatever, but we didn't account then for the costs of the impact on climate change, the impact on health, the impact on environmental degradation, everything else. And so we are counting the benefits, but not the...
Well, even the cost of taking care of all these people that no longer have jobs to do. You go back and look at the Industrial Revolution, in a lot of ways, we let a lot of people down during that time period because we took away their jobs. We took away their ability to keep the lights on, food on the table, et cetera, et cetera. And then we said, this isn't our problem. Sorry, you shouldn't have been a farmer. Whoa, but I was a farmer. My dad was a farmer and his dad was a farmer. What do you mean I shouldn't have been a farmer? I thought this was a good job. We invented tractors. Sorry, you're screwed. Or whatever the job was.
So who has the responsibility there, Jesse? Who is responsible for thinking about this stuff? Obviously there is the government in the sense that we are all part of the government. And so we need to think about these solutions. Does the private sector have a responsibility to think through some of these problems?
I think so. One of the things that I have done. So part of the reason that my headcount has decreased is that I did, and whether this is right or wrong, I don't know, but I did a couple of incentives, structure things, maybe not incentives. Basically, I had a call with my company and I said, hey, listen, I see that some of you guys are utilizing AI to do doing your job. I think that anyone who doesn't do that will be unemployable in the future. I don't know how far in the future that will be, but I believe that is true. So anyone in this company who isn't going to learn how to use AI to do the job they currently do today, I'm going to let go. And I gave everyone the ultimatum, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for your education. I'll do everything, but I'm letting go of everyone who isn't going to actually take the initiative and start learning how to use these tools in their craft. I was really, really surprised 6 months later when I had to let go of almost half.
Okay. Because they were not willing to engage with that and to train takers.
No, they just wanted to keep living in the world that they're living in. And so part of the reason that the company, now what happened was all of those people who didn't want to learn these systems, they left, but everyone else who wasn't learning these systems started to learn them. And so their productivity increased exponentially. And even though my headcount decreased by a lot, what was interesting was that our productivity increased by a fair amount as well. And I've gone from roughly 370 people on the team to about 120 people on the team today. And we get more work done today than we did when we had 370. And the amount of productivity increases regularly as we find out new ways that we can become more productive in what we're doing.
Well, thank you for that, Jesse. Listen, because we're about to wrap up, I want to ask you like 3 lightning round questions, as brief as you want to be, maybe 15, 30 seconds each, and then address 3 issues that perhaps we haven't quite addressed. Or one is, what's one AI use case today that you think is massively underrated?
Massively underrated? I would say art.
Okay. I'm listening.
So I think that a lot of people are really interested in pursuing art, but the reason I think it's underrated is that most people are focused on the capitalistic, let's deal with medical, let's deal with coding, let's deal with all these things that are like direct value producers. But in a world where people need to spend their money and there's a lot less work to do, the pleasure side of what people like need to engage in to live happy and fulfilled lives, I think is going to be seriously important. And so everyone discounts the AI art side of things, the music, the movies, and people are interested in the technology, but they tend to discount it as being commercially viable or important for the future.
That's great. My wife will love hearing that. She's an artist, so she would. I think that's one issue. What's a myth about AI you wish people would stop believing?
That AI itself is going to destroy humanity.
Okay. That's my follow-up question. So let's say you anticipated that. Tell me.
I think that the odds are that somebody who is a bad actor with access to really, really intelligent AI might cause serious harm to humanity. But I don't think I think the odds of AI going rogue and deciding to wipe out humanity for some reason.
Do you think do you think we can achieve ASI, like super intelligence?
Yeah, I think we can.
Do you think that super intelligence will not go rogue?
No, I think the most likely scenario for a super intelligence that, let's say, decides that it wants to be more evolved than humans, right? That is going to ascend to that next level of intelligence. I think that worst case scenario, it decides that it wants to have humans around just like we decide we want to have dogs around or any other.
Well, that's not a very optimistic vision. That doesn't bother you? That doesn't disturb you? That's the best case scenario?
I don't think the dogs are all that concerned about us. Like, they seem happy.
And I do not agree for all of their fate that they're being, although
I don't know that they know they're not, and I don't know that we would either. If it was actually that intelligent, it would understand that we need to have some semblance of understanding our own free will and our own destiny, that it would understand what our needs are, and it would create an environment for us.
So this would be a Matrix scenario.
Happy in a sense. I don't know that we'd be smart enough to understand that we're living a life that we didn't want to live, and we probably go on happily living it for a millennium without even knowing, possibly. I mean, who knows? I mean, we're talking about ASI, right? Like,
yes. Yeah, it would be obvious super intelligent. I mean, there's a question here. I mean, there's a fundamental question about what is being human. And not just the illusion of control or of agency, but the actuality, the reality of agency and control. And what you're suggesting is that the illusion may be sufficient for us.
I don't know, like, when is an illusion? Like, what is the clear defining line between the illusion and reality if you can't tell the difference, right? There is a certain point when you just have to decide, like, I won't tell you where I stand on the whole debate, but there are people who already believe you don't have free will. Interact. So if you go down, and I've listened to a lot of them talk about things. I don't think I am one of those people. But it is interesting to hear them talk. They're not idiots. It's not like you're talking to people who are really stupid. You know, these are people who have very well thought out arguments. And the truth is that line between the illusion and reality could be so, I just don't know that you can see it. I'm not sure. With the right intelligence that's running things, I'm not sure that you see it. Now, maybe it would be more like a Matrix scenario where you can see it and something's not quite right.
Yeah. Well, that's a Neo scenario, right? In the Matrix, where you understand that there's an aberration and there is something that is not working. And so every so often there's a need for rebellion and revolt. In one word, and this is the last word, the future of humanity in 2050.
Abundance.
Abundance. Okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
No words.
Well, Jesse, thank you. Thank you for taking some time to be with us today. That's been great.
Hey, not a problem. It was fun.
Appreciate
Enjoyed
it.
the conversation a lot.
And of course, thank you to our listeners as well. Join us again next time for another discussion of the intersection of law, society, and politics. Until then, stay human.